You're listening to the Fooled by the Root podcast.
This is your host, Heidi Marble. I'm so glad you're here to listen to this episode with Monica Schuss and John Tomanelli. They are siblings who were adopted, who didn't even know the other one existed for decades. They were able to, through letters through the registry in New York City, discover each other, and their reunification is nothing less than miraculous. In this episode, we talk about that instinctual belonging that happens when we finally are connected with our original families. We talk about the way that they want to advocate for adopted people. We're going to talk about the loss and reunion that they have experienced and all of the joys and trials and tribulations that come along with the journey of being adopted people. Enjoy this episode. I found out about both of you through my co-author, Elisa Zalma, MD. She saw your article and sent it to me, and I was so deeply touched by your story. It was just incredible. And then it was really funny because my husband also sent me a link of your story as well. So I feel like the universe said, you need to talk to these two. So I would just like to dive right in and maybe you guys could start at the beginning of your lives. You know, you're adopted, you're growing up and you don't know the other one exists. What was life like for you growing up? Did you always know that you were adopted?
You want to start?
Yeah, I mean, I knew from an early age. The girl next door to me had said to me one time, I was probably 3-4 years old, I guess, maybe older. It's hard to recollect the actual time frame, but she said that I was not born by my mother. And I said, yeah, I was. I said, well, you weren't born by your mother. And she goes, well, yeah, I was. So I was confused what that meant. I didn't know. So I went home and I said, Donna next door there said I wasn't born by you. And I don't know what that means. She goes, you were a chosen child. And I was like, oh, okay. I didn't know what that meant either, but it seemed like an answer, right? So that's kind of what I went with, and you figure it out along the way as you get older. And, it kind of bothered me. It was confusing. I didn't understand why that would have happened.
But you had our mom actually kind of called up once and tried to speak to him on the phone, and then also showed up one day.
Yeah, I was very, very young. It could have been like, and again, the age may escape me because it seems unreasonable that it would be at like 1 to 2 years old, to have that memory. But I recall, standing out front. She was my foster mother at the time because they had not adopted me yet. And the car pulled up and the lady got out and she jumped out and she was like, it's mommy. And I was like, you're not my mom. She's my mom. It's like, who is that, mom? And she told me to go in the house. And then I was kind of like looking out the window, see what was going on. And then the car pulled away and that was that. So I suspect that was her, my mother, my biological mother. And then another time I was put on the phone probably around 4 or 5. And the lady on the other end was just crying uncontrollably. And I was just like, why are you crying? And I said to my adoptive mother, it's like, she's just crying. So she took the phone and I just walked off and I heard her say, come on, Maddie, like, get it together. That was her name. That was my biological mother's name. But I didn't really remember the name. So like later on in life, when I was trying to figure out maybe what her name was, it just wasn't there,
Well, you were so young.
Yeah, I was very young. So it was I remember it was like an uncomfortable thing because as I walked away, I kind of knew who that was, who I was speaking to, but not really, it's a little confusion there. This growing up, there's feelings of maybe embarrassment about it. That weighed heavy on me. I was kind of embarrassed if people knew. I was trying to keep it quiet, and if anybody, kids are always asking you, oh, wait, what's your nationality? And I had to say it was Irish and Italian. because that's what my adoptive parents were. So I didn't have any information on that, but I always felt like, I'm not really being honest. And I wonder if anybody can tell. Started to get anxiety about being asked that, you know?
Yeah, I think a lot of adoptees can relate to that. Did you have any other siblings? Obviously, you had one you didn't know about, but.
Yeah, so there was, my adoptive parents had 3 children of their own, but they were old enough to be out of the house at that time. And so when I came around, they had another boy who was 2 years older than me, who they ended up adopting as well. And then there was an older kid that they were fostering. He was there till I was like 10, I think, 10 or 11. Yeah.
Monica, what about you? Was your existence a lot different than that? Did you always know? Did you find out from the neighbor? I mean, oh my gosh.
Well, apparently my mother had me, and I was in the hospital for almost 7 months. That was 1960. And I didn't get to the foundling till January, like 6 months after I was born. So it appeared that I guess the nurses at the hospital took care of me for that period of time until I went to the foundling, which is like an orphanage. And then I stayed there until I was about 2.5. And then I went to the home that I was adopted into. So I was about 3 when I got it. Well, I was 3 when I got to that home. So, they wanted me very much. My mother couldn't have children. And I had a similar situation where the girl across the street was, ha, you're adopted, And I went home and I said, she's making fun of me because I'm adopted. And my mother went like this, like she looked around, she goes, they got stuck with her. She said, we chose you. We wanted you, And I started laughing and I was like, well, that's awesome. I never really had any of those feelings like John did, of feeling kind of like, he kind of felt like, why didn't she want me? But I think that's probably because he had some contact with her. So it was kind of like where I never had anything at all. I really truly have no memory of even being in the foundling. That my parents had said to me, my adoptive parents said, I would call names out. I would be by the stairs and I would call for somebody named Rory. And they said it must have been somebody from the foundling. Because I was there until I was 2.5. So obviously, you kind of get to know people. So that was it. But I always kind of thought, maybe they would come look for me. And, the only thing I knew was that my father was a Marine. So I was like, oh, he must have been like so cute and, has uniform and stuff like that. And then, obviously that's what happened. On the flip side, the same thing happened again 7 years later when she had John. So kind of like blew a little bit of a hole in that, that like, fairy tale that I had in my mind the whole time. And, we're born on the same day. We have the same birthday.
That is mind-blowing. I saw that when I was looking at different articles on you guys, and I think it would be so amazing because there's so much pain in adoption. But the miracle of both of you finding each other, let's just fast forward a little and talk about that. I know that you guys submitted to a registry. Maybe you can educate us on how you found each other, because it wasn't through DNA, which is what a lot of people are experiencing now, because most of our records are closed. So it's pretty miraculous to me, the story behind how you guys connected.
Yeah, well, we found out separately, of course, that the New York Foundling Hospital had a registry, and that you could, sign up. We had to pay something. You had to send notarized documents. And if anybody else did the same thing, or if someone came to look for us, which I always figured it would be my parents, I never really thought about a sibling except like, oh, maybe I have a brother or a sister out there kind of thing, but not through that. I signed up in 1997 and, it was like cost $50 and, signed the papers.
Yeah.
Right.
I was in like 1991. I signed up. I was getting married, and at the church, they wanted me to provide a baptismal certificate. So I didn't really have one. So the church said, oh, you can get it from, they knew where to get it, right?
The
it was a church in New York City. So I, sent away for that, and it came back in a New York Foundling Hospital envelope, and I was like, wow, well, that's a lead. I didn't know I was there. So then I wrote to them and found out that, New York State has a mutual consent registry that they can participate in. So, I signed up then thinking, maybe my mother would sign up. I'd find her and then, time goes by and then, one day there's a letter in the mail 27 years later.
27 years later, I came home from work. I'm on the phone with one of my kids. The others are outside. I have 6 children, so they're all over the place. I'm opening the mail. I'm on the phone. I'm like, oh no, the city. What do they want now? And it says, we've matched you up with a biological brother. I'm very out there. I'm jumping up and down. I'm crying. I'm holding the letter. I'm shaking it. I'm going, I have a brother. I was 59 years old. I lived 59 years being an only child. My son was crying. They were all crying. They were like, oh my God, Mom, that's fantastic. So that was,
wow.
He got the same letter,
Yeah,
but obviously,
So I got it. I was kind of looking at it well, New York State Health Department. I was like, what's that about? So I opened it up and I'm reading it and I'm just shocked. And I went numb. I was like, oh my God. So I was like, what do I have to do here to get this, moving? So there was a letter in there to get notarized, giving consent. So I immediately, the next day, I got it, notarized and
it was snowing.
It was snowing.
And I remember too, because I was like, I don't care. I'm getting this to the post office.
I went on my lunch hour at work and I mailed it. I'm like, all right, don't be excited. It took 27 years to get this. If it takes them 8 months to respond, that'll be what the expectation is. And I think it was 2 weeks later.
2 weeks.
The letter came and I opened it up and her name was on it, her address was on it. And I was like, oh my God, this is fantastic.
How far apart did you guys live from each other?
It's about just in 1 hour. That's it. It was amazing. So here now I get my kids and we're on the computer, they're better at it than me. And we're looking up this guy and I'm like, ooh, I don't know. He doesn't really look like me. Wait a minute. What if he just got out of jail? What if he needs a kidney? What if he needs a kidney? I'm like, oh no, what,
That must be a common thing because I thought
kidney. The same thing.
I guess
like,
I'll be
oh
short
no.
of kidney.
Because, this is so incredibly
right, hard to believe,
amazing that it's hard to believe after all these. I tell you, I had gotten a private investigator. I went to all different Marine bases. Every Marine I ever saw, I was like, do you know anything about any databases? I tried. I didn't do too much with the social media stuff because I didn't feel safe with that. I didn't know, you never know who you're dealing with. And then ultimately it always came up, oh yeah, give us a couple $100. We'll help you. And I was like, no. I kind of found somebody who looked like him, who looked like it made sense. And then when I saw his likes, one of them was, adoptees. And I said, oh my God, this has to be him. So I got all the phone numbers and my kids are like, you're just going to call? I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to call. And then it was like a really bad weekend. It was raining and snowing. And I'm like, where is this guy? How come he's not at my door? I can't go to his door. I'm a girl. And I'm like, where the heck is he?
I did think about going there, but I couldn't muster up the confidence to do that. I figured let's just, it'll play out the way it's supposed to.
He'll forget it. He waits forever. Me, I can't wait. I'm out the door and, halfway there before. So.
Oh my gosh, Monica. So did you call him?
I called, but I didn't get any answers.
I only had a cell phone just to work. None of those numbers that I had were any good anymore.
They weren't any good. So
on
Monday, now I go to work and I'm telling everybody and they're like, send him a Facebook message. And I'm like, I don't know how to do that. So they helped me. And all I said, because I didn't know if it was him, I said, hi, John, did you get the letter? Because I figured if he did, he would know. Yeah. He would know. The whole day goes by and there's no answer. And I'm like,
I was at work. Yeah, I was at work. I didn't even look at the thing. And, I was getting ready to leave work. It was like 4:00, and I looked at my thing and I was like, oh my God, there's a note from Monica. So then we said we could, we'll have a phone call in an hour because I had to go home.
And I had to get home from work.
We got on the phone around 5:00. I called her up, and we were on the phone till like 9:30.
Yeah,
that night.
We spoke for like 4.5 hours.
Oh my gosh.
And the thing is John had done a lot of research.
So previously, I because it always came up every now and then where you felt like, oh, I want to know, and I try to research on the computer, and you'd get really nowhere because you didn't have any information to start with. So someone had said to me, you could do this DNA stuff to find your family, and I was like, I'm done with that. I'm not doing that anymore, And then, like, I don't know, 5 months later, it was in my head, what's this DNA stuff? Maybe I should look into this. So I ended up doing, 3 DNA companies like Ancestry, 23andMe, and Family Tree DNA. I spent, a long time trying to build out other people's trees with a little bit of information that I got from the first one, and it was probably like an 8-month period where I just came home from work and dug in and, tried to piece things together. And ultimately, our biological aunt showed up on the Ancestry one. So I kind of said, hello, how are you? And it wasn't clear at first she was my aunt. I thought it was like a first cousin because I looked at the DNA, it's called, the unit of measurement is a centimorgans. So I didn't really match it up to the range that would be an aunt. So at first we thought we were first cousins. And then I said, well, it looks like you might be like my aunt. And she was like, how do you figure that? So I sent her, like a tutorial on the DNA, and she read it and she was like, yeah, this is fantastic. She said, I'm happy to know you. And unfortunately, my sister, meaning my mother, is not as enthusiastic. So she's still alive, but she's not as enthusiastic. Maybe in time she may come around. So, but she said, until that happens, I'll be your surrogate. That was a fantastic thing for her to say. It lessened the blow. Yeah, it lessened the blow.
What do you make of all that, and how have you processed that? Because, reunification is this fantasy that we want it to be. And so often we're not prepared for those difficult answers that often lay on the other side, because let's face it, it's probably a trauma or some upset that created the relinquishment to begin with.
Right.
So I think it's safe to say, some reunions go better than others, and some people have really great experiences, but other people are faced with those types of answers. So what can you speak to about how you guys have dealt with that?
Well, when I came on, this was a couple of years, right? 2 years before I came on the scene.
Yeah, I found them first.
And
oh, wow.
So
wow.
I had, I knew that she wasn't interested. So it was like, it was hard to not try to contact, but I wanted to respect her wishes and give her time, and figured maybe in time it'll work out. So I kind of hesitated to try to make any contact based on what my aunt had said. And I had gone to dinner with my aunt, twice, and I brought, I brought my daughter the first time and one of my sons the second time. And we didn't really talk much about, my mother, just kind of a little bit about, medical history and stuff. It really gives you that information either.
It's so true. So true, John.
But when I came on the scene, I was like, once she finds out about me, it's going to be over. She's going to want to meet me.
So when I got the letter, I like emailed her. I was like, do you know anything about this? And she said, come to think of it, yeah. She said, I thought that you were the baby from that. Apparently there was a daughter born first. She never offered that to me before until I asked. So that's kind of what she said. And I was like, do you know anything about like, her father or anything? And she said, I just know his name was Donnie. And then when I spoke to Monica, she was like, oh, I only know my father's last name.
And it was the same name.
And I said, oh, well, I found out his name was
so
Donnie.
Then I really knew that it was real. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you guys are full siblings. That's crazy.
And he actually said, I said, well, what's Aunt Terry's name? Aunt Terry, her name is Terry Ann. That was my name. My name before I got adopted, it was Teresa Ann. So our mother named me after her sister and him after her brother. So we knew there was just too many coincidences like this, like pinch, like this is really real. This is like incredible. So,
wow, you guys,
but through our aunt, she actually, this all happened in March. And then I wanted to send her something for Mother's Day because, you have this invisible, you know what I mean? This like a thought of what she may look like. Now we had a face. And once you had that, there was more of a connection. She asked us not to speak about you. Like I was shocked because we weren't upset. We were excited and wanting to embrace this. And they said that she had a lot of luggage. I mean, we don't really know, but that's what she said, that she had a lot of luggage and she had a lot of issues. So we didn't want to pressure the situation because we wanted our aunt, you know what I mean? We needed her to kind of maybe help kind of smooth things over. And it just never happened. But I was ready to go and COVID happened. I don't care. I'm going. And I'm going. That's it. We're going to go. We're going to sit outside and we're going to wait for them to walk by. And then we're going to see if we can kind of make some sort of contact and just let her know not to be afraid. We're not upset. We're not mad. We just, there's questions you want to ask your mother. And it didn't happen because of COVID. And then, unfortunately, she passed away this past November. I guess there was always that hope. And then that hope was just gone, but we have each other, and that we've never, like John said it great. He said, we've never known this. We've never known this type of relationship because I didn't have any siblings at all. And, the siblings he had, they didn't have that connection of that really being related.
Yeah, my heart is bursting. One of the things that you said in one of your interviews is like when you met each other, you knew who you belonged to. Yes. And you talked about like can we go to that moment when you first met? Can you just take us inside of that space?
Well, we decided to meet at a restaurant, and I kind of got there a little bit early first. I don't say early.
Of course.
I got there on time. There was no other cars there. And I'm like, what's going on here?
Are they going to bring me into the basement and kill me?
I don't know.
Does he really want my kidney?
Yeah. I was a little paranoid sitting there. And then like this car pulled up and it was two women and, a couple of kids. And I'm like, all right, well, that's obviously not her. And they went into the place and I'm like, all right. So I'm just kind of waiting. And then the car pulls up and I can see, she pulls up right next to me. I was backed in and then she pulled,
I pulled straight
in. So we're like looking at each other the whole time. And then the smiles break loose, because we just kind of see each other, we get out of the car and we just hugged.
We hugged. We did not let go. It was,
we just hugged for a long time.
It was a feeling that I still get goosebumps from. I really do. It was like such a connection. Like I said, like we knew we belonged, and it was just, we went into the restaurant and we're sitting there like this, staring at each other. Yeah. Wait a second. Let me look at you, and it was like, but it wasn't awkward.
Yeah, I was like,
it was weird.
Like, don't get freaked out because I'm just staring. It's like, I'm staring at you too. Just trying to let it seep in.
It's like coming home. I know when I had my reunion, I also found a sister, and I remember a similar experience where I had never felt, I think you had said that too at one point, John, never felt that at ease or comfortable or peaceful. It was just like our body knows, there's something in us that knows and understands that these are our people. And I think what is so amazing is your soda bread connection. We've got to go there. Like, I love this whole thing. I mean, how in the world does that happen?
It's crazy. It really is. It's like, there's so many parallels that we've had. There's music. He was playing music at a place that, I used to go to listen to bands and just so many things in our lives, our adopted moms both passed away the same year. And then, we both got divorced the same year. And we had another relationship, very similar relationship for a long time, where we both felt that we were like almost caretakers in a sense. We were kind of helping somebody, through some stuff. And it was just so weird. And while we were upset that we lost all those years, because a lot of those things would not have happened if we were in each other's lives at that time. You know what I mean? Like certain circumstances. Like John had a heart attack when he was 45. He had a heart attack. He was eating fast food like every meal of the day. That would have never happened if I was around. So I was like, this definitely wouldn't happen. But on the other hand, it's all about in God's time and in the universe. And it happened when we could truly just embrace each other and embrace, the situation and just be able to, go with it and just enjoy, we're doing all sorts of fun things. Like the other day, we go bicycle riding and we're baking together. And, we went to the park one time, we went camping with the kids. And we were on the little horses on the spring. We're on. They're like, Mom. I'm like, hey, we never got to do this.
And I think it's so amazing too, because during COVID, all the stars lined up and the two of you shared the same residence. So it's almost as if you had all this space in your life for each other. That is such a gift. I think it's absolutely extraordinary. It's just beautiful. Beautiful. So how about talking to me a little bit about what advice would you give to adoptees who are searching, who are struggling with loneliness and some of the things that, I don't know, it's very hard to be adopted, let's face it.
Yeah, I would say, you have to do the DNA tests, because that gives you an avenue to search. I remember I had done the first one, and I was looking on Yahoo groups for adoption, and then there was people saying that they had got their results and they found this, and there was great stories, but then there was stories about things not going so well, so I kind of had a heads up by reading that stuff. I wasn't contributing, but I was reading it a lot, so I was kind of prepared for whatever came my way. And as the results came in, when I found my biological aunt, I was like, this is huge. The pieces are coming together. It's the burden of not knowing was really kind of a huge thing. It really is a burden not to know where you come from. I describe it as like walking around with heavy luggage your whole life. And then when you find the answers, it's as if you put the luggage down and stepped away from it. That's what I felt.
Yeah, and that's such an incredible feeling to have the connection that both of you have. What do you think, what we're struggling with when I talk to lots of different people in the adoption constellation is that society has this concept that adoption is a fantasy, that it is a win-win-win, that there's a baby in crisis and the solution is adoption. And none of the loss is really acknowledged. Furthermore, just some people will never have access to their original documents. And if they do, they're falsified. So there's a lot of work to be done. Where do you guys stand on all this? And how do you feel? And because I know you want to, your story is such a beautiful example of what can happen when reconnection occurs.
Right.
And what do you think needs to change? What would you like to see happen?
Well, I had exactly what you just said. I just got my birth certificate like a couple of months ago. I've never had a birth certificate. I had a little green piece of paper that said my name and I was born on this date and it was sealed. It was, what do you call it? I had a seal on it. We went to Albany together when we first met to advocate for the Adoptee Bill of Rights in New York State. And when that went through January 15th of 2020, we were allowed to request our pre-adoption birth certificates. However, because of the COVID and people weren't working, I just got it. and the information is incorrect. The names are spelled wrong. Things are not correct. So we would like some type of organization where we can help adoptees come to some place where they feel safe, where people are there who have been through it, who know what they're feeling. We did an interview with News 4, and they were saying, do you want to do a social media app? I said, absolutely not. You don't know who you're speaking to. You don't know, where your information is going or where it is. And also, it's such a delicate situation. A lot of people don't realize this. When we went to Albany, my goodness, I remember this girl. She was crying and crying and crying. She felt like, I associate it with like hanging from a tree limb. You're alive, you're here, you're on the planet, but you're not connected to anything. I just remember my heart went out to this girl. I was like, oh my goodness, I just felt so bad for her. She wanted to find some connection so much. And the system here in New York is obviously flawed. I mean, our mother's name was the same on our birth certificate, except for one letter. And it took them 27 years to match us up. Something's wrong. So I've been I'm on like a little crusade to try and talk to people and see if we can make the system more navigable and have some kind of organization where people can actually come and sit down and speak to people. Because then they're going to feel safe and they're going to feel confident, and, they'll, go the extra step. But definitely the DNA is very important, because a lot of people are doing it now. I never did it because I was afraid. I was like, oh, I don't want my DNA out there and stuff like that. But once John and I met, he said, please just do it so we can see if it truly comes up.
It was more about finding the other side for her,
And I did it. And it came up like it was very strong, that we were definitely brother and sister. So, that's awesome. But I talked to some people, and there are some agencies that actually do it privately. So for people who don't want to have their, be in the database and stuff like that, I've been gathering some names. Because people have reached out to me since they saw some of the interviews, and somebody called me from school, left a message. I'm like, I remember you. I remember that Catholic school uniform. You were in my class. I was like, oh no, but that's a good thing, because if we can help others feel what we're feeling and not have to wait 27 years for it, well, then what's better than that?
Nothing, Monica. I think your story, both of your story, even though there's a lot of loss and pain, I think what you've gained in each other is simply miraculous.
Oh,
it's incredible, and it's inspiring. I think it helps people know that, I deserve to know my truth, and if I have siblings, because I don't think people think about the loss. Siblings are losing other siblings, and they're losing original family and health, as you mentioned, John. That vacuum of health information that you don't have access to. It just feels like change needs to occur. And I just so appreciate both of you taking time in the evening to chat with us. And I can't wait to share this podcast with people and also keep up with you and see where you guys go with all of this, because I think your story is just one of the most beautiful things I've heard in a very long time.
Thank you.
And is there anything else you wanted to touch on before we let you get on with your evening? I know I talked about soda bread. I'm thinking, I'm a foodie. What about that? Can you make
we can always send you one of those.
Yeah, but didn't you both? I mean, that's kind of an unusual thing to make, isn't it? Or is it not?
My adoption paper said that our mother was an Irish Catholic. We now know that is completely untrue. I'm not even like this much Irish. My adopted mother was Irish, and I kind of embraced that, So my mom was a big baker, and I kind of took that on. I have a couple of kids with disabilities, and that's another thing. I spent years of horrific times trying to find out what was wrong with my son. And it turned out that he had symptoms on the bipolar spectrum. I now know my father was bipolar. But imagine if I had known that 20 years ago.
It could have helped him more.
So much more help without all of this craziness. So I always baked healthy. I always baked my own stuff because, you buy some cookies in the store and they have this FD&C red and yellow, and they have preservatives and nitrates or sulfates or whatever it is. And it would make them bounce off the walls. It was terrible. So I just said, forget it. I'm just going to make my own stuff. So first time I met John, I brought him a piece of soda bread, and he started doing it at his house.
I always helped my my adopted mother in the kitchen as well when I was younger.
And
that's another way you guys connect. Yeah.
Well, I have a small baking business, and I do it on the side. It's more of like therapeutic for me. Sometimes, with all the kids, it gets a little crazy, and that's kind of like relaxing to me. They always said that when I mix the wet with the dry, I always have a smile on my face. So my logo is like this smiling bowl. And John now, he's got an incredible knack for making scones. I mean, I call him Scone Bro.
Scone Bro. I love it. But it's those simple things, just being able to ride a little silly horse in the park or bake bread together. The things that most families take for granted, quite honestly. Exactly. I think you're able to extract so much more joy from just the simple things of being together.
Yeah. And it's funny how, like I said, we parallel one another. Like, he's so good at this, and we just have so many things that we're alike. Like you say, it's miraculous. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. Something that you said to me when we first spoke that day, you were saying, I never really thought of it that way, but it was really very pertinent that your body knows when you're taken away.
Yes.
And that is like a physiological thing that stays with you. That doesn't go away. And I think that a lot of adoptees, some of them either ignore it or tend not to realize that it's there, but it may come out in other aspects, maybe personality. I know a few people who have actually started to do bad things. A couple people, friends of mine whose siblings who were adopted or fostered in the beginning, ended up in jail just because they didn't feel connected to anybody. So that is huge, what you said about it's a physiological thing that your body knows. Like you said, when we met, our body knew that we were meant to be together.
Yes. I'm so glad you brought that up, Monica, because one of my favorite authors, she's actually going to do the foreword for our book, is Nancy Verrier. And her book is called The Primal Wound, and it points right to that.
We read that.
So and I think for most adoptees, well, for me, it required a bottle of wine to get through it because I'm like, just the shock waves of reality, because I think so many people, including adoptees, are under the impression, well, if I didn't remember it, it didn't happen.
Right.
But Nancy told me, we were on the phone once, and she said, all you have to do is watch Animal Planet. It's not that hard to see that if a baby, something is removed from its mother, it's catastrophic.
Yes.
And then you have this substitute come in. So the sheep comes by and takes on the little wolf or whatever happens. And yes, it satisfies a need, but it doesn't remove the injury or the wound that exists from not having that person. And if you think about it, it's really weird now, because when I see babies, I almost get a shiver, because I imagine wow, think about that, just removal. It's really hard to conceptualize. Thank you for pointing that out. It's a very real thing. And it lays down the foundation for, adoptees are overrepresented in mental health. Like you said, there's anxiety and acting out and depression and all these things that can erupt. And then you add the multiple layers of trauma that occur when you're discovering things. And, it is complicated and deserving of attention and care. And I love that you guys are thinking about the tenderness of the situation and how to best help people. And I really think that's wonderful.
Is that there's not that much awareness out there for adoptees. This is one of those things that occurs, and it's almost like fluffed over in a sense, because
exactly.
I know so many people, and they did an article on us in the paper, and I left it at where I work, and they, people had signed petitions in the past for me, but they never really realized the impact. And even in my small little, office in this little world, it's like, my goodness, I didn't realize. And I think we kind of need to get that, out more so people can understand. And then we can have these little networks, on the West Coast, on Central, East Coast, where people can kind of connect and help each other, and of course with us, the other thing is never, ever give up. And it happened to us, it can happen to other people.
That's a perfect way to end it. You guys, you are both a gift and a treasure. And I hope we can have you come back again and give us an update at some point.
That would be great. And you are absolutely fantastic and wonderful that you're doing all of this. Thank because, so many people just, they take it to themselves and they leave it there, and you're bringing it out and just making it bigger so that people understand it.
Oh, Monica, thank you for saying that. I really think we belong to each other.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.